Okay, so in terms of the session this morning, what we're going to go through is, what is Microsoft Copilot? We're going to talk about some of the security considerations that you need to think of. Kind of before kind of going ahead, I think there's a lot of excitement about in terms of this AI tool, but unless your environment and your security settings are set up properly, you could potentially be unleashing a bit of a monster, across your organization. So just making sure that we've got some security considerations in place. We'll kind of go through how Microsoft Copilot will help your business, and then we'll kind of give you a live demo and some examples of kind of using 365 itself. One of the things I would ask, just as a piece of housekeeping, if you could just kind of keep your microphones on mute if possible. There will be time for a kind of a Q&A session towards the end, and if you've got any questions, if you could just pop them in the chat box, and we'll kind of pick those up as we kind of go through. But again, I will kind of deal with those kind of Q&As towards the end of the webinar. Okay, so what is Microsoft Copilot? So Copilot is for Microsoft 365 is an AI-powered tool that helps users with their tasks in Microsoft 365 applications. Now, there's lots of different versions of Copilot. So today we are talking about Copilot for Microsoft 365. So you may have seen, if you kind of go to Bing, there's a web version of Copilot which you can use for kind of research and some other online tools, and that you'll have seen Copilot appears in kind of lots of different places. But this is specifically about kind of Copilot for Microsoft 365. The reason why we're focusing on this is that, unlike other AI tools, so you've probably heard of things like ChatGPT, that's been about for a little while now. One of the concerns about using kind of an open source AI tool like ChatGPT is it is learning from the data that you input into it. So if you're asking it for some code, or you're asking it for some ideas to deal with marketing, that's absolutely fine. But what you don't want to be doing is inputting business or sensitive data into an open AI tool like ChatGPT, because it is learning from it. So I've seen examples where businesses, unknowingly, have inputted things like Excel information, sensitive business information, and asking an open AI tool like ChatGPT to analyze that data. Now, the risk of that is you've got no idea what's happening with that data, how it's being processed, or any kind of security controls in place around it. So we need to make sure that we've got control over our business data, and ensuring that we've got kind of security and compliance measures in place to protect it. What also can it do? It can assist with tasks such as creating presentations, formatting documents, organizing emails, just really helping us out. It's like your own it's like your own kind of personal assistant that's going to do quite a lot of the work for you. You're still going to have to finish some bits off, so it's not going to be something that's going to be absolutely that's always going to produce you the finished article, but it's certainly going to do the vast majority of the work for you, so that you can kind of go back in and tweak and change information. Copilot uses kind of natural language to process and understand user requests. So things like when you're using Microsoft Excel, I don't know if you're like me, historically, I don't use Excel that often. So sometimes when I want to do what could be potentially quite a basic task, I end up having to go and find somebody that will show me how to do it, such as things like merging columns together, etc. That suddenly what is a 2-minute job ends up taking 15 minutes, because I've got to kind of figure my way out how to do a particular process, because I've not done it for a while. So actually being able to talk to the application in natural language, saying, I want you to do this thing, Copilot will understand that and do that process for you. It can save time and increase productivity for your users, and again, really on the basis of what I'm saying, that it's going to do quite a lot of work for you in certain situations.
Merchants from around the globe who switch to Shopify. Why?
Sorry, let me just. Okay, perfect. So it's going to do quite a lot of the work for you. So before you start, so one of the things that we're saying to people is, we've got lots of customers that are really keen to start using Copilot, but my initial message is kind of stop. So before you kind of roll out Copilot, what we need to make sure that things like all of your security permissions, are in place and configured properly. Now, in kind of the modern world, we have this kind of notion of kind of a zero trust security. And without going into the complexities of what that really means is that your users should only have access to the data that they need to do their job, and they should only have access to the applications that they need to do their job. So that means that we've got controls in place that stop information being inadvertently shared. So I don't know if you've ever had scenarios in the past where perhaps a file has been inadvertently, permissions have been left open on a file, or somebody has shared a document historically, and they've probably potentially shared it completely open with the organization. Now that's only a real risk if somebody effectively snooping through and trying to find that particular file or information. There's obviously all sorts of other issues around that. But now when we've got something like an open AI tool, use it as an example. If somebody has shared last month's payroll, and they've perhaps shared that using kind of a OneDrive or a SharePoint link, and have inadvertently set the wrong permissions, there would be nothing stopping somebody going to kind of something like Copilot and asking it, what is the CEO's salary? What is person's X salary? Now, if Copilot has access to that information and the permissions are left open for that particular user, it's going to just give them the answer to that question. Because it's not just going to search information that's on the web, it's going to search information that is contained within your document libraries, within your folders, with any data that you've got access to your internal system that people have got access to. So some of the things that we can do to avoid those types of situations is aside from permissions and typical security controls, we can also deploy what's called information protection tags. So we can configure within your kind of Microsoft 365 environment. We can configure tags that will automatically detect things like personal identifiable information or financial data or other types of information. So, even if it's left open, that we can actually put restrictions in place to stop the AI tool being able to kind of research and look at that data. So, data privacy, for all the reasons that I've kind of just said is really, really critical. The whole access control measures that we've got in place, so making sure that kind of permissions are all set up properly. We just need to do a real thorough check of your environment before rolling this out, certainly rolling it out to all staff. And then making sure we're using kind of secure communication protocols. So this is kind of just standard IT stuff, really, but making sure that everything that we're doing and we're accessing is in an encrypted format. So how will Copilot help your business? It'll keep your kind of leadership team and executives informed, making it really easy to analyze information and data. Help running your operations and keeping it smooth. Help with HR, hiring and engagement. Give your sales team an AI assistant that will help them close tools, and it will create emails and content and marketing material to support that. It'll boost your marketing activity. So if you're ever looking for ideas for kind of how to market a particular product or service, or you want tips, or put together a business plan of content and ideas, and strategies around such like social media and search engine optimization, all sorts of things that it will give you. From a finance perspective, it will allow you to quickly and easily analyze data. So, where before we potentially needed, somebody who was an expert in terms of using Excel or things like Power BI, because we can now ask normal questions, in real language of data. It's really easy for us to analyze that data and information, and we can get that information much quicker rather than necessarily waiting for reports to come to us. The art of using Copilot. So I've been using Copilot now for about 3 weeks, well, about 4 weeks in total. And the real art of this is actually just talking to it normally, and talking to it in natural language, which seems really obvious, but when we've been using computers for such an amount of time, typing in natural language and asking it a question, asking that of a machine to do it, it just takes a little time to kind of get your head around. But things to do is be really clear and specific. Keep it conversational. You can give examples. You're able to reference files. You're able to reference other documents. So if you're compiling things like a marketing strategy or a business plan, and you've got other internal documents and reference, you can reference those internal documents for to help produce the content. You can ask it for a feedback. You can check for accuracy, provide details, things that you don't want to do with an AI tool is kind of give it conflicting instructions. So if you're composing a document or you're using Copilot with a particular thread, don't kind of change the topic midway through, because you'll kind of confuse the conversation. So you want to start a new conversation with Copilot, and we'll show you how to do that this morning. Asking and that's kind of what I said, don't ask a new topic in the same chat. Don't be vague, be as descriptive as possible with what you want this tool to do. And when we kind of just jump into the demo now shortly, I'll be able to show you specifically why that is. But the more prescriptive that you can be, the more information that you can give it, the better response and detail that you're going to get. Don't use kind of slang or jargon language. What you'll actually find is with 365, if you ask it to do anything that's to produce any kind of content in that way, it'll probably refuse. It is pretty well educated to know that actually to produce offensive material, to produce anything in a negative tone, it will challenge you in terms of that, and say in terms of offensive language, it certainly won't allow you to do that full stop. I've just put together some really brief examples, and again, I'm not going to kind of spend a huge amount of time going through these, but it's more just for to help us think about how we can start to use Copilot within the business and kind of give a few examples. So, from an executive's perspective, being able to catch up on chats and emails. I don't know, my mailbox becomes flooded with a huge amount of information. I get, the volume of emails I kind of get on a daily basis, or suddenly I'm copied into a thread. There's a conversation that's taken place previously, and suddenly I'm forwarded an email that's perhaps it's got 20 different responses in it. So rather than having to read the entire thread, I can actually ask Copilot to summarize the thread of that email, and it'll kind of pull out the key points that I need to be aware of, and then I can kind of drill into the specific detail. I can gather input from various people if I've had various speakers within a Teams meeting or a webinar, that I can actually just generate a list of key points that have been made. I can get it to rewrite content that I've done, create invitations in email, review last quarter's speech. So again, I'm going to show you some of the bits, within Teams that you can do, revise kind of presentations and slides. From a HR perspective, create job descriptions. I don't know if you've ever had to do that to start from scratch. Sometimes it's a bit of a head scratcher for the first 10 minutes just to kind of get into what you want that to be. You can ask Copilot to create your job description for a specific role, and it'll give you the, probably 90% of what you need, and then you can start to really add the specifics in there. You can kind of discover qualified candidates using kind of the Microsoft 365 chat, create interview questions, conduct an interview using Teams, and it'll prompt you for things like follow-up questions, etc., etc. So you can start to see some of the things that are going through, operations, analyzing data, summarizing the weekly status meeting, thanking employees for their work, and getting you just to create, content for you, and actually just being able to do this much quicker and much easier. Using things like Whiteboard, which is a pretty underutilized application within the Microsoft 365 application. Suddenly this becomes really usable with Copilot, and again, if we get time, I'll be able to show you some examples of that as well. Sales, refine, discovery sessions using kind of Microsoft Loop, putting together presentations, updating presentations, summarizing meetings. So this is probably one of the things I find incredibly powerful within Microsoft Teams. I'm starting to use Copilot in every single Teams meeting now. So it'll take firstly, it takes a transcription of everything that's been said, but I'm able at the end of the meeting that it will produce me my meeting notes. It will give me a summary of what everybody has said. It will give me, all the actions that have been agreed in the meeting. So I can literally just kind of copy and paste those into an email and send them round to any of the attendees. In Microsoft Word, creating proposals, being able to put all this stuff together really quickly. Marketing, doing things like market research, looking at market trends, analyzing data, to do with market trends, creating social media posts, offer letters, pitch decks, all these types of things are where we can start to use Copilot in terms of creating content. Finance, I think, real big tool here, being able to analyze financial data really kind of quickly and easily in Excel. Refined deal analysis, creating, an executive presentation. So, when you've got to present the figures, to the board, etc., and actually converting that from an Excel sheet into a PowerPoint. Actually, you can just go to PowerPoint and reference the financial data, and it'll put the bare bones of that presentation together for you. Again, saving a huge amount of time. So again, I'll show you some examples of that now shortly. Meetings, etc. From an IT perspective, not necessarily IT, but be able to create project plans, brainstorming risks, revising kind of support procedures, creating executive updates. So we need to update on projects, etc. How they're getting on. Teams meetings to be able to kind of discuss plans, etc. So pretty sure I'm kind of skipping through this, but it's literally just to kind of give you some ideas of how we can start to use Copilot in different areas of the business. Okay, so let me just quickly end that. Bear with me 2 seconds. So the first place I'm going to start today is Microsoft Teams. So I'm in my I'm kind of in my demo account that I use within AAG. So this isn't my normal Teams account. One of the things that you'll see within Teams now, though, is that you've kind of got Copilot here. So within your normal chat session, so I can start to ask things like questions within kind of Copilot within Teams. So as an example, if I want to catch up on any emails that's been sent to me in the last 24 hours, I can ask Copilot something like summarize emails sent to me in and again, unfortunately, in this mailbox, it isn't one that I use on a day-to-day basis. So it's only going to pull back a small amount of information, but that's literally because there's not many emails in there. But what you can start to see now is that the emails that I've received through, and this is some stuff I've got marked to kind of send backwards and forwards so that we got some data in here. But without having to kind of trawl through every single email, it will pull back to me the highlights of those emails themselves, and next to the content. So I can see one here that said where a file was shared with me, and next to each of these sections you can see these little citation numbers. So if I want to dive into the specific detail of this particular comment, I can click into the citation number, and it will show me, that section of the email thread that came through. From an Outlook perspective, this is the thread that it's pulling data from. So I can, really quickly and easily, I can start to kind of ask information across here, and then it will kind of prompt me for things like follow-up questions. In this case, there were some guides that I asked Mark to send across. The AI has detected that that's there, so I can ask it for the follow-up question saying, what are the recent guides attached in the email, and it will pull it straight through. And And again, if I can if I click on this reference link, it'll take me straight to that specific email where I can download those guides from. So again, it's giving me a link straight to the information that I need rather than having to trawl through. So I can start to ask it, kind of really specific questions around there. But what you'll see here as well is that you can see, it'll give you some examples of prompts that you can use, within this tool. So, things like, what's the latest from, this person, organized by emails, chats, and files. I want to get key information from a particular file, so I could upload, perhaps there was a business plan or a policy document, or something like that. I can ask Copilot to give me key information from a file. I can draft an FAQ, and again, I'm going to show you some examples of these as we go across. But it's giving you some example prompts to kind of get you started. So, things like getting calendar information, you can ask it here, when is my next meeting with this particular person or this particular client? It might be something that you've got booked a couple of months in advance. So rather than trawling through your calendar trying to find that date, you can quickly just ask Copilot to do that. Probably in my time using Copilot so far, the most powerful thing I really like within Microsoft Teams is that when you're running a Teams meeting, you can get Copilot to listen and effectively take notes and listen to actions of what you do. So I ran a quick marketing catch-up meeting with our CEO yesterday afternoon. Because we have a marketing meeting with an external agency that's coming up on Friday, who's coming up to visit us. Now, I recorded this meeting with Copilot, and what this has allowed me to do is, so this is a meeting that's happened in the past, but I can now go back and ask questions of this meeting. I could have, unfortunately, I can't really demo you this live, on the webinar today, but the same principle applies, is that I can do the things I'm going to show you now, I can do live during a meeting as well. So going into this historical meeting, I can go to this recap section. I can see a transcript of the entire conversation that Copilot has picked up. So, I can see everything that was kind of said during that meeting. But what I can do is I can go to my Copilot, and once it loads up, again, it shows me the history of the conversations. But to show you as an example, if I do summarize this meeting, Copilot will kind of go away, and in this case, it's looking at the transcript of the meeting and pulling out all the kind of key points as part and parcel of it. But I can actually ask it to do this mid-meeting. So whilst I'm in a live meeting with somebody, I can ask it to summarize the meeting so far. I can ask it to kind of pull out key action points so far. So here it's given me a summary of, about the marketing plan for our cybersecurity services. It's actually kind of pulled out kind of key action points of who's going to deal with these particular things. So things like commercialization of educational content, which attracts a lot of traffic but doesn't generate revenue. These are all conversation points that were part of the meeting that we had last night, that without having to kind of go back and replay a meeting, to go back and read the notes, it has produced that for me automatically. So I can very quickly kind of copy that, go and open up an email, send a new email to anybody who was the attendee of that meeting, and paste it in. And I've now very quickly got a summary, of the key action points within there, with citations that people can kind of click into the specific detail. So taking meeting notes, following up on kind of key action points. The other sort of things you can do is things like suggest follow-up questions. I can type properly. Now this is quite useful if you're talking to a client, a supplier. It could be an interview with somebody. You can ask live during a meeting that you're running with Copilot to suggest follow-up questions. For some reason, mine's running a little slow today. But you can see here some example questions, and most of these are generally really on point. Is, some follow-up questions to marketing. How do we plan the update for for the website, for our basic services? What are the deadlines and responsibilities for the task? How do we align the educational content with our service offerings and value proposition? So you can start to see that the AI has really listened to the conversation that's taken place and is giving really pertinent follow-up questions. Now, I appreciate this is kind of marketing related, but it works really well from an interview perspective. Like I said, meetings with clients, because it's listening to everything that's being said and it understands the context of what's being said. I've yet to see when it comes up with an ill-informed follow-up question. They're generally really on point. So kind of really kind of powerful tool that actually we can go back to historical meetings and kind of get at those key actions and who agreed what and who said what, etc. One thing to be aware of, that if you can, so we've again in the way we've used Copilot so far, we've also used Copilot in our boardroom to kind of record meetings, which works really well. But the only thing it doesn't do is it won't necessarily detect who the specific actions are for. It will highlight the actions, but because if everybody's in the same room using the same microphone, it's not able to distinguish between different people. Occasionally it might, if you've been kind of really specific in terms of what you've said. So as in, Mark, I need you to do this thing. Yes, it will define that as an action, but it will listen. It will listen for those actions, and that's obviously because if we were all joining the meeting via Teams, it's really easy to distinguish between the different people who are speaking. But if we're all in the same room, that's not quite the same. Okay, there's lots. I'm going to try today just really kind of giving you an overview of a few different applications and examples. There's lots and lots of things that you can do within Copilot, which we're not going to have time to cover off today. But I just kind of want to show you kind of a few key areas. From an email perspective, so within your email, email can sometimes be quite difficult to manage. Sometimes we get kind of lots of different emails coming through, and I suppose using the example of you end up getting forwarded a thread of email. So there's a load of conversation that's taken place elsewhere, and suddenly this massive long email lands in your inbox. And you end up having to kind of trawl through that, read from the bottom, and actually just trying to figure out what this whole email is about and what actions that you've got to do off the back of it. Now, again, this is only a very small email thread of some conversation that's gone backwards and forwards between me and Mark. But within Microsoft Outlook now, I can actually ask Copilot to give me a summary of this email. So it's pulling out here that kind of the key points again. So I asked Mark to forward me the agenda for the webinar today. I asked him what time the webinar started. I asked him for kind of the URL for the web pages. So this is all hidden within content between these messages, but it's just pulled out the key points of those emails. And then if I wanted to look at this bit about the lead magnets, they're available in PDF format, I can click on the little citation number and it will take me straight to that particular email or that part of the conversation thread. When I'm kind of composing or replying to emails within Copilot, so in this example here, if I'm going to send a new email to somebody, I can draft this email with Copilot itself. So if I click on draft with Copilot, I can say create email to send to all staff thanking year and exciting plans for the year ahead. So I'm just going to give it some very, in this case, a very brief email. But before I click generate on here, I can ask it for some generation options. So I can ask Copilot to write this email in a particular tone. So, it can be very direct, natural, casual, formal. I could even make it a poem if I wanted to. I can, ask it to define length. So, I've not really given this much content to work on at all, but, I can say I want this in kind of medium length and I want it in a casual tone. So if I now click generate, it's going to put the bare bones of an email together. Again, I've not been very specific in this at all, but hopefully what we'll see is that there's a bit of a starter for 10 in terms of putting that email together. Good message. So Copilot's given me an example here. Hello everyone, I hope this email finds you well and that you're enjoying the holiday season. Again, if I'd have been more specific, it's not going to, it will pull out really kind of specific detail. But I've got an email that it will craft and put together. If I don't like this particular email, I can ask it to regenerate and it will create me a new one. And every time it creates a new email, it will create a draft of it. So if I wanted to revert back to the previous one, I can absolutely do that. So what you can see here is that this is the second draft of 2 drafts that I've created. So I could go back to the first one that it chose, or I can go to the second one. So, very quickly and easily starting to kind of compose emails, put things together. Again, this isn't necessarily going to be the finished article, but it means that you've got something to work with that you can then kind of go and tweak. Again, not necessarily kind of the best example of asking you something to write, but really quite useful. Off the back of it. So just little things that will help you save time in terms of kind of putting content together. Just being aware of time. So now if I jump into something like Microsoft Word, so one of the things that I can ask it to do is kind of be really quite specific. So as an example, I might want it to put a business plan together. So I've just put together a bit of a fake prompt about creating a business plan for a coffee shop in London. So I'm going to ask Copilot to say, create me a business plan for a new coffee shop in the centre of London. The shop will be aimed at people between 20 and 40 years old. The business plan should be aimed at attracting investors so the idea can be expanded into a franchise model. Include any market data and trends over the past 5 years. So I can now click generate, and what Copilot will go and do is start to put a document together for me, putting together this business plan. Again, it's not going to be the finished article, but it's going to give me a real, again, I suppose, starter for 10 of, information I can use. Now, the more descriptive I can be and the more information that I can provide the AI, the more accurate the information it will produce and the more detailed information that it will produce. So in this case, you can see, it's producing an executive summary. You can see some of the information. It's kind of pulling together kind of market trends. It's talking about kind of prime locations. You can start to see some of the detail that sits in here, is pretty good. Again, the more prescriptive you can be, the more detailed it'll be. It's starting to go in now, look at things like market analysis. So this will just take about another 30 seconds to finish writing this off. But again, if you were starting completely from scratch and trying to put something together, this is putting together the bones of a pretty meaty document. Should have probably selected something a little bit shorter for the purposes of this demo, but it's just to really give you an idea of the level of detail that you can start to get into, and it will go into even more information. So here it's starting to give us some market analysis and comparisons between Starbucks and Pret a Manger and etc. So hopefully this should finish shortly. If not, I've got a finished version that we'll kind of jump into. But I think hopefully you can start to see the level of detail that's kind of going into this is quite impressive. I think the one thing, as we kind of said in kind of the do's and don'ts, you still have to check this for accuracy. So it is referencing publicly available information and publicly available data in terms of this particular example. So it's really important that you do still check this for accuracy. It's now kind of compiling us a marketing strategy that sits alongside this document. Right, that's taking a little bit too long to finish. So I'm just going to, in fact, I think this has about done. Really should have picked a shorter example. Right, perfect. Let's just kind of dismiss that, close that down. So we're going to stop. We'll stop generating this. So you can see kind of the level of detail that's in here. Now, other things that you can start to do within this document. So in terms of this kind of financial plan, what we'll see is if I highlight some text within here, you'll see that the Copilot symbol follows me down. Where I am anywhere within the document itself. Now, I've got a few bits of financial information in, not sure how well this will convert, but actually, if I'm sending this document to investors or to some executives, I don't necessarily want it to be really wordy. So I can, where I've got some financial information within the document, I can say, actually visualize this as a table. So just by highlighting that text, it's going to go and pull that together, and hopefully again, it's pulled information together there, but popping that into a table, so that information is kind of easier to see. So there's an example of kind of putting a kind of a document together. Another kind of quick example that I'm going to show you is so if I just open up another Word document. So what I'm going to ask Copilot to do now is to reference, is to create a document referencing another information. So this document here is I've put together a brief document of our kind of products and services, and it shows, and within that document gives the benefits of services that we sell, as AAG, the business, as a business. So I'm going to ask this now to create. So create a FAQ document showing the benefits of each service. So this this document itself, what I'm referencing is a bit of a cheat sheet guide. So this is just kind of key benefits of different products and services that we sell at AAG. So whether it be things like cloud backup or cyber essentials, Duo for multi-factor authentication, etc. I'm referencing this as a master document. I think I just closed. Right, let me just very quickly do that again. I'm going to reference that file. Create FAQ document. In fact, I'm just going to keep it as basic as that. So what this is now doing is it's going to create a frequently asked questions based on the file that I've referenced, and you can reference multiple documents within here as well. So if you're wanting to put some information together, or a policy together, or a proposal together based on some technical or sales information or product information that you've got, you can see here that this is now putting kind of frequently asked questions together on different products and services that are contained within that document itself. So, what are each of these services, and kind of giving answers off the back of it. Now, again, I've been very vague in terms of the responses and what I've asked it to do in terms of creating this document. So again, I keep saying the same thing over again, the more specific you can be, the more detailed information that it will provide. So hopefully you can start to see how kind of quick and easy that is to do. So I'm just going to stop generating that. Kind of just jumping into Excel. So one of the things to note with Copilot in Excel is it's still in preview. So unlike some of the other Office applications, so there's still features that are coming in, and I'm certainly finding in Excel there's some things that you can't do yet. So as an example, and if I get time, I'll kind of show you those now. But there are certain things that you can't do within Excel currently. But it's it certainly isn't far off being completely finished. Now, if you're using Copilot within Excel, one of the things that you have to do is to make sure that any Excel data is formatted as a table. Unless it's formatted as a table, Copilot won't work and won't be able to analyze the information. It's really quick and easy to do if you've not done that before, but if you just click on kind of format as a table, you'll see very quickly it just kind of changes the color based on the format that you've set, and it will automatically kind of give you the filters at the top, so so that you can organize and be selective of data. Now, and again, if I click outside of here, Copilot will tell you, I only work with an Excel table. If it's not a table already, so in terms of the cell that I've clicked on here, it tells you how to do it and how to convert it. Now, this is just obviously some sample data that I've got together. So I've kind of got an order number, I've got kind of first names, surnames, regions, I've got the sales rep, I've got the item, I've got some quantities and costs, etc. that sit alongside that. Now, sometimes there's sometimes basic things that you need to do. So I've had examples in the past, and I still don't know the formula of how to do this, but I've got two columns here, one with first name and one with surname, and actually I just want to create a column combining those together. So I want a new column with first name, surname in the same cell, and it might be because I'm exporting data or I want to put it into a particular format. Now, I've got no idea the formula to be able to do that within Excel itself, so I'm going to ask Copilot to do it. So I'm going to say create a new column after column C, combining first name and surname. So I'm just going to go and ask Copilot to do that, and hopefully so it's now giving me the formula. So it's saying this is what it does, here's the formula of how you do that, and basically, do you want me to do it? And I'm going to say yes. So very quickly, it's gone and added that column in there for me and done that information. What I can also do is things like, so in terms of this final column here, again, I'm giving some kind of basic examples, but create a new column, adding 15% to total cost. Title column. Oh, I could type. Title column revenue. So again, really quickly, and again, you can go far more detailed than this, but I'm just trying to give some kind of basic examples. What this should now do is go and add a new column into column K, titling it revenue, and hopefully we've got 15% that's being added to that. So if I now click on there, I've now got my kind of 15% that's been added to those, and then I can do things like I can ask it things like change, make sure that they're all set to 2 decimal places, etc., and it'll change the formatting. But perhaps I might want to apply some conditional formatting. So I might say highlight top 5 revenue in green. So I can very quickly get it to apply some conditional formatting, and it's going to go and highlight the top 5 revenue in green. So I can start to, bring this, make this kind of come to life and apply some formatting again, be as descriptive as you kind of want to do with it. Where I can start to analyze some of this data as well now, though, is, I perhaps want to break down, I want to know the revenue by region. So in this case, I can say, right, actually, analyze by region and rep. I'm going to do it by region and rep. So now what it should kind of go away and do is actually start to pull us together a chart that will kind of be able to give us that data. So again, if you don't know how to do things like kind of pivot charts and examples, within there, you can see it's kind of put this chart together, and it's now saying, right, okay, I've analysed the revenue by region and rep. Here's a pivot chart, so I can say, right, I want to add that to a new sheet. So now, really quickly, I've now got a pivot table that I can go in and look at the the specific data by by region and by rep. So hopefully you can start to see again some of the power that kind of comes to life in terms of using this tool. The final thing I'm just going to jump into is PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go and open up a new PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to jump into my Copilot. And so as an example, I might want to create a presentation for a client around specific products and services that we sell. So referencing that same file that I used to create those kind of frequently asked questions earlier, I'm going to now ask to create a presentation from my cheat sheets file that I was looking at earlier. So if I just go and open this up. So I'm just quickly getting a link to this file. So what I'm doing is adding this is a link to the document that I opened up previously. So which is my cheat sheet document that you can see here. I was going to say, actually, I could be more prescriptive, but we're kind of running out of time. So I just want you to create a presentation based on the information within this document. So click send. If you've got specific company templates and brand templates, you can apply those themes to this as well. You can start to revise the information that sits within there. But what this is going to go and do is effectively, again, give me a really good starter for 10 of a presentation around, in this case, our products and services. In fact, so it's now just popping the slides together. I think there's quite, there's quite a bit of information within here. So the length of time that this would normally take to put together. So now adding my speaker notes. So, now what we can start to see, again, I've not applied our kind of brand templates and things like that, just for speed, but it's now giving me an agenda. So I've got an overview of those kind of products and services, what this is, things about cyber essentials. So again, just a basic example, but we can start to see, how it's put me together, a 31-page slide deck on all our kind of different products. So again, would save me a huge amount of time. All I've now got to do is kind of go in here and start tweaking the presentation, applying our kind of brand themes, reviewing the content that sits within there. But again, hopefully you can kind of see as a as a quick demonstration of that becomes a real time saver. So in terms of today, I appreciate there are only some really kind of brief examples. Let me just stop sharing my screen. So there are only some kind of really brief examples of some of the benefits in terms of using Copilot. One of the things I'd kind of just reiterate is before anybody kind of dives in to doing this is making sure those kind of security and compliance controls are in place, that you've got all of your security set up as it should be. What we are then able to do for you, so if I just bring up my final slide. Sorry, this would have been much slicker, but for some reason I still don't know why Mark's thing wasn't working. So what we can do is a kind of Copilot readiness assessment. So basically, we'll do a comprehensive review of your permissions, an overview of kind of security implications when using kind of Copilot or AI. Review things like your data loss prevention policies and data tags, so we can automatically identify any sensitive information and data within your environment. We can do further demonstrations that are really tailored towards your business. So again, I've given kind of some very basic examples today, but we can start to show the complexities of where you can take this to the next level, so that we can really then define the most effective use cases for your business. So if that's something that you'd like us to have a look at, feel free to drop me an email. We'll share with you our contact details after as well. So if you just ping an email over to charlie@aag-it.com, we can kind of get that booked in for you. So have we got any questions? Lots. So,
hi Charlie.
Hi there. You all right?
How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thanks.
So how does the pricing work?
So at the moment, the pricing is done on an annual basis per user. So the exact figure, it's just shy. It's about £297 per user per year. So it's what that equates to. Sorry, but I think it's about £290 something per user per year on an annual basis. So it's not something that you need to deploy to everybody either. But there's certain people in businesses that this could be really useful for.
Understood. And is there a charge for the assessment?
Just depends. So in terms of kind of going into more detailed demonstration, not for the initial consultancy in terms of the initial conversation, but then there would be in terms of doing a complete audit of kind of security permissions, etc. Because we need to run some really detailed reports and work with you, making sure that everything's as it should be.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
So we've got just reading through some of the questions here is, so how do I get the Copilot button in Teams? Ultimately, you need to, in fact, somebody's asked it, you need to have a kind of Copilot subscription, and then it will appear. Let's see if these, I think Mark's answered some of these we're going through. So how does it impact data storage? Does it need a big requirement? No, say it's, within your Microsoft 365 tenancy, you don't need to kind of consider storage for Copilot. It's only analyzing the data and information that you've already got stored there. So it's not like you need to buy additional storage in terms of being able to do that.
Does the AI, Charles, does the AI sit in the cloud as opposed to a downloaded TPC? So it's not slowing your machines down?
Correct. It sits in the cloud.
Can you go back and look at a previous conversation? So how we open up a new chat, if you like, for different things. Is there a way to go back to an archive to see what you looked at yesterday if there's something you want to go back to? Yeah,
100%. So again, when you've got Copilot running, so whether that be from a chat or from within a meeting, in kind of the example that I showed you, in the session, you can just ask Copilot for a summary of that chat, The same kind of security controls are in place with 365. So people can't go and unless you've given them explicit permission to do it, they can't go and delete that that history. So anything that you've asked Copilot to do, from a staff and employee perspective, is all auditable as well. So there's a new admin portal that sits within the 365 tenancy. So we can track and monitor and set rules around what people can and can't do.
Okay.
Do we need information protection tags to override Teams memberships? Probably. Jill, I'll kind of pick that up you separately, because I could probably just do it with digging into the detail of that one. Can you verbally ask your question? Yes, you can. So apologies, I didn't show that in some of the prompts where I was typing in. There is a little microphone symbol within there. I didn't use that today because obviously I'm using my audio for the webinar, but you can verbally ask it to do things as well. You haven't necessarily just got to type it in. Is the list of all Microsoft apps that use Copilot, Power BI, project, etc. It's not in every single application yet, and there are different versions of Copilot, but there are other applications that Copilot works with. We will be picking those up in later webinars, so in terms of that coming into things like Power BI, etc. But like I said, there are different iterations of Copilot, but today was specifically about the 365 one. Can you provide some examples of how it would be beneficial for IT support? Yeah. So you can just ask it questions. So you can ask it that I'm getting this specific error message. You can ask it, how do I install this particular service? You can ask it a question that you would normally ask anybody else. So anything that can be researched or searched, you can ask it for information around that. So it is literally almost just opening up the power of, I can ask this thing most things and it will give you an answer how to do it. So it's not just necessarily about producing content. I've asked it to create a business plan, an example in the demonstration, but what I can ask is actually, how do I create a business plan? From an IT support perspective, how do I fix this particular issue, or how do I install this particular piece of software? If it can find the detail around it, it will give you a step-by-step guide of how to do it. So producing things like manuals, policy documents, things like that, it makes it really, really easy to do when I can reference source information. Okay. Any other questions that anybody's got? Okay, no problem. I will hang around for a couple of minutes on the call anyway. So if anyone has got anything they want to ask after, please feel free to give me a shout. Other than that, hopefully you found that kind of useful today. We will be running kind of future sessions around Copilot and really more specific about individual applications. But today was just about trying to give a bit of a general overview of capabilities within some of the different 365 apps. So thank you very much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it, and please get in touch.